Long before the world became obsessed with power, wealth, and status, there lived a humble stonecutter beside a great mountain that stretched endlessly into the sky. Every morning before sunrise, while the valley was still wrapped in silence, he climbed the steep, rocky path, carrying nothing but his heavy hammer and tired body. Beneath the burning heat of the afternoon sun, he worked endlessly, striking the hard stone again and again until his hands became rough and cracked with pain. Sweat soaked his worn clothes, and exhaustion followed him like a shadow. Yet, despite his difficult life, the stonecutter once carried something many wealthy men could never find: peace. His small hut was simple, his meals were plain, but his heart had once been calm. However, little by little, something inside him began to change. Each time he looked toward the homes of richer men in the valley below, a quiet dissatisfaction started growing deep within him. And without realizing it, the stonecutter slowly began losing the happiness he already had. One evening, as the golden light of sunset faded across the valley, the stonecutter slowly made his way home from the mountain. His arms trembled with exhaustion, and dust clung to his rough skin like a second layer. But then, something caught his attention. Standing proudly near the center of the valley was a magnificent mansion unlike anything he had ever seen before. Its polished walls shimmered beneath the fading sunlight. Elegant silk curtains danced gently in the evening breeze, while servants hurried through the wide doors carrying silver trays piled high with luxurious food and sparkling wine. Laughter echoed from inside the grand home, warm and effortless. The stonecutter stopped walking. For a long moment, he simply stared. Then he looked down at himself, his cracked hands, his worn clothes, the sweat dried across his face. Suddenly, the life he once accepted no longer felt enough. A strange heaviness settled deep inside his chest. "How unfair," he whispered quietly. "I spend every day breaking stones beneath the burning sun, yet I will never live like that." And, for the very first time, the stonecutter began believing that happiness belonged only to the rich. In that dangerous moment of envy, his heart made its first wish. The next morning, the stonecutter opened his eyes, expecting to see the cracked ceiling of his small hut. But instead, he found himself lying on soft silk sheets inside a magnificent palace filled with golden light. Rich carpets covered the floors. Beautiful lamps glowed along the walls. Tables overflowed with roasted meats, fresh fruit, and expensive wine. Servants bowed as they passed him, waiting to fulfill his every command. For the first time in his life, the stonecutter felt what he believed was true happiness. He laughed with excitement, dressed himself in fine robes, and enjoyed every comfort he had once envied from afar. Day after day, he surrounded himself with luxury, convinced that his suffering was finally over. But slowly, something strange began happening inside him. The excitement faded, the rich food no longer tasted special, the silk robes felt ordinary, and despite having everything he once dreamed about, an emptiness quietly returned to his heart. Then one afternoon, the sound of drums echoed through the valley. A grand royal procession moved through the streets below. Soldiers marched proudly beside a golden carriage carrying the king himself beneath a jeweled canopy. Crowds bowed as he passed. The wealthy man watched in silence, and envy began growing inside him once again. In the blink of an eye, the wealthy man became the king. He now sat upon a magnificent golden throne inside a palace larger than anything he had ever imagined. Servants rushed to obey his every command, while soldiers in shining armor stood guard beside towering gates. Crowds bowed low whenever he passed through the city streets, and the sound of drums announced his presence across the kingdom. For the first time, the stonecutter felt truly powerful, no longer poor, no longer forgotten. He believed he had finally reached the highest place a man could possibly attain. Wrapped in royal robes and surrounded by endless luxury, he smiled proudly and whispered to himself, "Now I have everything." But power has a cruel way of revealing its limits. As summer arrived, an unbearable heat fell across the kingdom. Day after day, the blazing sun burned above the palace without mercy. The rivers began shrinking. Crops dried beneath the scorching sky. Even inside the royal chambers, the king sat drenched in sweat, exhausted and miserable despite the servants fanning him constantly. Slowly, frustration replaced pride. He looked toward the burning sun overhead and realized something terrifying. Even with all his armies, wealth, and authority, he could not command the sky. The sun was far more powerful than any king could ever be. And once again, envy quietly returned to his heart. A voice echoed from the heavens once again, ancient and powerful. "Your wish shall be granted." In an instant, the king was transformed into the blazing sun itself. Suddenly, he rose high above the world, shining with terrifying brilliance across endless oceans, towering mountains, deep forests, and crowded cities. Golden light poured from him in every direction, warming the earth and commanding the skies. Rivers sparkled beneath his gaze. Entire kingdoms awakened because of his light. For the first time, the stonecutter felt limitless. No army could challenge him. No king could command him. He believed he had finally become the greatest force in existence. Proud and unstoppable, the sun burned brighter each day, spreading heat across the entire world. Fields dried beneath his power, oceans shimmered like fire, and shadows disappeared wherever his light touched. "Now nothing is greater than me," he declared proudly. "I control life itself." But just as those words left his mouth, something unexpected appeared on the horizon. Slowly, a massive dark cloud drifted across the sky. At first, the sun ignored it. But within moments, the cloud moved directly in front of him, blocking his light completely. Darkness spread across the earth below. The sun pushed harder, burning with all his strength, yet not a single ray could break through. For the first time since becoming powerful, fear and frustration filled his heart. Even the mighty sun, it seemed, was not truly invincible. Once again, the mysterious voice answered his desire. "Your wish shall be granted." And in the next moment, the blazing sun transformed into a massive dark cloud drifting high above the world. The stonecutter felt powerful in an entirely new way. He stretched across the skies like a giant shadow, covering forests, oceans, villages, and mountains beneath his enormous form. Wherever he moved, sunlight disappeared. Thunder roared within him. Rain poured from his body in endless torrents, flooding rivers and drowning roads below. Entire villages trembled beneath the force of his storms. Watching the earth surrender to his power filled him with pride. At last, he believed no force in existence could challenge him now. Even the mighty sun had vanished behind his darkness. The cloud drifted across the heavens with growing arrogance, convinced he had finally reached the highest form of greatness. But suddenly, the sky around him began to tremble. At first it was only a whisper in the distance. Then it became a violent roar. Without warning, a furious wind slammed into the cloud from every direction. The once mighty cloud twisted helplessly through the sky as the wind ripped pieces of him apart. His dark shape scattered into thin fragments, spinning wildly across the heavens. Panic filled him as he struggled to hold himself together. No matter how much rain or darkness he carried, he could not resist the invisible force tearing through him. And for the first time again, the stonecutter realized something painful. Even the cloud was weak before something greater. The voice from the heavens spoke once more. "Your wish shall be granted." In an instant, the shattered cloud transformed into the raging wind itself. Suddenly, the stonecutter could race across the entire world with unstoppable speed. He howled through deep forests, bent towering trees, and sent enormous waves crashing across the oceans. Villages trembled beneath his fury as roofs were ripped from houses and dust storms swallowed the roads. The wind roared across mountains, deserts, and valleys without mercy, wild and untamed. For the first time, the stonecutter felt completely free. Nothing could hold him, nothing could control him. He laughed proudly as he swept through the skies, convinced that he had finally become the most powerful force in existence. "I can move the seas. I can command the storms. I can scatter even the clouds themselves," the wind shouted with pride. "Now nothing can stand against me." But then, far in the distance, something appeared that did not move at all. A massive mountain stood silently beneath the darkening sky. The wind rushed toward it with terrifying force, slamming against its rocky cliffs again and again. Trees bent violently nearby. Dust exploded into the air. The wind screamed with all its strength, determined to shake the mountain from its place. But the mountain did not respond. It did not bend. It did not tremble. It stood there in complete silence, ancient and unmoved. And slowly, for the first time, fear crept into the heart of the wind. Once again, the ancient voice echoed across the heavens. "Your wish shall be granted." In that moment, the furious wind became the mountain. Suddenly, all chaos disappeared. No longer racing endlessly across the world, the stonecutter now stood vast, silent, and immovable beneath the open sky. His towering peaks stretched above the clouds, ancient and majestic. Storms crashed against him without effect. The burning sun could not weaken him. The wind that once felt unstoppable now seemed small and powerless against his enormous strength. For the first time since his journey began, a deep calm settled over him. The mountain feared nothing. It stood untouched, through seasons, storms, and time itself. And at last, the stonecutter believed he had discovered true greatness. "I am eternal," the mountain thought proudly. "Nothing in this world can move me. Nothing can destroy me." Silence filled the air around him. The valleys below looked tiny and distant. Even the clouds drifted beneath his towering cliffs. But then, from somewhere far below, a strange sound reached him. Tap, tap, tap. At first, it was barely noticeable, a tiny rhythm echoing against the rocks. The mountain listened carefully. Again the sound came. Tap, tap, tap. Slowly, curiosity turned into unease. The mountain looked downward and saw a small figure standing at its base, a simple man carrying a hammer. With patient hands, the man chipped pieces from the mountain one strike at a time. And in that quiet moment, a shocking realization slowly began forming inside the stonecutter's heart. The mountain stared in disbelief at the tiny figure below. Day after day, storms had failed to move him. The raging wind could not shake him. Even the blazing sun and endless rain had left him untouched. Yet there, at the foot of the mountain, stood an ordinary stonecutter calmly striking the rock with a simple hammer. Tap, tap, tap. Each strike was small, almost insignificant, yet little by little, pieces of the mountain began falling away. The sound echoed deep through the stonecutter's soul like a truth he had spent his entire journey trying to escape. For the first time, the mountain understood something powerful. True strength was never loud. It did not need crowns, armies, storms, or endless power to prove itself. Real greatness lived inside patience, persistence, and quiet purpose. The tiny stonecutter below possessed something none of the powerful forms ever had: steady hands and an unshaken spirit. Suddenly, all the riches, titles, and powers the stonecutter had once envied felt meaningless. The king still feared the sun. The sun feared the cloud. The cloud feared the wind. The wind feared the mountain. But the mountain itself was slowly changed by the simple work of an ordinary man. A deep silence filled his heart. For the first time in his long search for greatness, the stonecutter saw the truth clearly. He had spent his entire life chasing power everywhere except within himself. Tears of understanding seemed to flow through the ancient mountain as he whispered softly, "I was already enough from the very beginning." And with a heart finally awakened, the mountain made one final wish, not to become greater, but simply to become himself once again. Suddenly, everything disappeared. The towering mountain, the roaring storms, the blazing sun, and the endless sky all shattered like mist fading at dawn. The stonecutter's eyes slowly opened beneath the shade of the old tree where he had fallen asleep. For a moment, he remained perfectly still, breathing softly as reality settled around him once again. A gentle breeze moved through the branches overhead, carrying the peaceful sound of birds singing somewhere in the distance. Warm sunlight slipped through the leaves and touched his tired face. Beside him, resting quietly in the grass, lay the same old hammer he had carried every day of his life. The stonecutter looked around slowly, his heart strangely calm. His small world had not changed at all. The mountain still stood before him. The valley remained silent and ordinary, yet something inside him was completely different now. The dream was already beginning to fade, like water slipping through his fingers, but the feeling it left behind remained clear and powerful. He remembered the endless chase for greatness, the hunger for power, the disappointment that followed every transformation. And now, sitting beneath that ancient tree, he finally understood what the dream had been trying to teach him all along. For a long time, the stonecutter said nothing. He simply listened to the wind, watched the sunlight dance across the grass, and held the silence close to his heart. Slowly, the stonecutter lowered his eyes and looked at his hands again. The same rough hands he had once hated, the same cracked palms that had carried heavy tools beneath the burning sun for years. But this time, something had changed. He no longer saw weakness in them. He no longer saw the hands of a poor, forgotten man. Instead, he saw strength. Quiet strength. Honest strength. Hands that had worked patiently every single day without complaint. Hands capable of shaping stone, enduring hardship, and continuing forward, no matter how difficult life became. For the first time in many years, there was no envy in his heart. No bitterness. No painful desire to become someone else. The wealthy merchant no longer impressed him. The king's power no longer seemed important. Even the mighty forces of nature now felt small compared to the peace he suddenly discovered within himself. The endless chase was finally over. A soft smile appeared across the stonecutter's face as he picked up his old hammer from the grass. The tool felt different now, not like a burden, but like a part of who he truly was. He rose slowly to his feet and turned toward the mountain once more. The warm afternoon sunlight rested gently on his shoulders, while the breeze moved quietly through the trees around him. Step by step, the stonecutter walked back toward his work, not with exhaustion or frustration, but with a peaceful heart that no longer needed to compare itself to the world. The story of the stonecutter is not just an ancient tale. It is a mirror, reflecting the lives of millions of people today. We live in a world where comparison never sleeps. Every day, people scroll through social media watching strangers display luxury cars, expensive vacations, perfect relationships, and glamorous success. Slowly, without even noticing it, many begin believing the same lie that trapped the stonecutter, that happiness belongs somewhere else. Somewhere higher, richer, more powerful. We chase money believing it will finally make us feel secure. We chase status hoping people will admire us. We chase success because the world teaches us that our value depends on achievement. But the dangerous truth is this: the moment you reach one goal, another desire immediately appears. More never ends. The wealthy man envies the king. The king envies the sun. The sun envies the cloud. The cloud envies the wind. And the wind envies the mountain. The cycle continues endlessly because comparison always creates another level to chase. That is why so many people today feel exhausted, even after achieving what they once dreamed about. They keep climbing higher while their inner peace quietly disappears. The stonecutter's journey reveals something most people realize too late in life. True happiness is not found in becoming someone else. It is found in finally appreciating who you already are. Real power is not loud. It is the quiet strength to live your own life with gratitude, purpose, and peace while the world keeps telling you to become more. One of the greatest struggles in human life is that people rarely feel satisfied for long. The moment they achieve something they once desperately wanted, the happiness fades faster than they expected. A new desire appears, a bigger dream, a higher level to reach. This is the invisible trap that keeps millions trapped in quiet disappointment. The human mind constantly whispers, "Maybe I'll finally be happy when I have more money, more recognition, more beauty, more success." But that feeling of enough never arrives because the problem was never outside to begin with. The stonecutter experienced this painful cycle over and over again. Every transformation brought excitement at first. As the wealthy man, he enjoyed comfort. As the king, he enjoyed power. As the sun, he enjoyed dominance over the world itself. Yet each new form only created another comparison, another weakness, another desire. The greener grass always seemed to exist somewhere else. And this illusion slowly stole his peace. Many people live exactly this way today. They spend years chasing a future version of life while completely overlooking the value of the life already in front of them. They compare their behind-the-scenes struggles to other people's highlight reels and wonder why they feel empty inside. But real fulfillment does not come from endlessly upgrading your status. It comes from learning how to appreciate your journey, your purpose, and your own quiet progress. Because if a person cannot find peace with what they already have, no amount of success will ever truly satisfy them. The world often teaches people that power must be loud. It tells us that greatness belongs only to the rich, the famous, the influential, or the people standing at the top. But the stonecutter's journey reveals a very different truth. Real power is often quiet. It lives inside the people who continue showing up every day without applause. It lives inside patience, humility, discipline, and gratitude. While the world chases attention, truly strong people quietly build themselves one step at a time. The stonecutter never realized the value of his own strength because it looked too ordinary. His rough hands were not soft like a king. His life was not glamorous. Yet those same steady hands could slowly break apart a mountain, not through violence, not through status, but through consistency. One strike at a time, one day at a time. That is how real transformation happens in life. Quiet effort, repeated long enough, becomes unstoppable power. Many people watching this story may feel overlooked, exhausted, or unimportant. Maybe your daily work feels invisible. Maybe your progress feels slow. But never underestimate the strength hidden inside ordinary people who refuse to give up. A patient heart can outlast chaos. A grateful mind can survive difficult seasons. A humble person with purpose is often far stronger than someone obsessed with appearing powerful. In the end, the stonecutter discovered that peace was not found in becoming greater than others. It was found in finally honoring the value of who he already was. And maybe that is the greatest lesson hidden inside the stonecutter's journey. The more we compare our lives to others, the more peace slips away from us. Comparison creates suffering because it constantly convinces us that who we are is not enough. It whispers that happiness exists somewhere else in another person's success, wealth, beauty, or status. But gratitude changes everything. The moment we stop chasing what the world tells us we should become, we finally begin seeing the value of what we already are. The stonecutter traveled through power, wealth, and greatness, only to discover that none of those things could give him lasting peace. In the end, the answer was never hidden inside a throne, a crown, or unlimited power. The answer was hidden inside acceptance, inside purpose, inside learning to respect his own journey. And maybe many of us need that same reminder today. You do not need to become someone else to deserve peace. You do not need to win the approval of the world to have value. You are already enough, even if life does not always make you feel that way. So, before this story ends, take a quiet moment and ask yourself this question. What blessing in your life have you been overlooking? What simple gift, relationship, ability, or opportunity have you stopped appreciating because you were too busy comparing your life to someone else's? If this story touched your heart in any way, share your thoughts in the comments below. Your story may inspire someone else who needs this message today. And if you want more meaningful stories like this, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to Lessons for Life Tales, and join us again for another journey filled with wisdom and inspiration. Thank you for spending these moments with us. Take care of your heart, your mind, and your peace. Wishing you health, wisdom, and happiness wherever you are.